Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review Neighborhood Watch, starring Jack Quaid and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. I almost forgot his full name. I was going to be like John Franklin Morgan or something. But anyways, I decided to watch this new release movie tonight, and I'm really glad I did. So for starters, like I just want to make sure that you guys know, I've been having like an allergy problem slash IBS problem the past few days, and so I've had a really like itchy throat on and off, and so if my voice sounds a little off, you know why. It's I had a little bit of a mix up with the regular probiotic that I take, and so it kind of really like messed me up. So anyways, I actually really enjoyed this movie, and it's funny because it's just like with anything, like when you least expect something to happen, it happens. And, you know, this whole year I've been watching new release movies, and I've been, you know, expecting every single one to be bad and expecting to be like, oh, another bad movie. Oh, the new release movies, they just keep getting worse and worse and worse. But this is the first movie of the year that I can confidently say is a good movie. It is a good movie, and honestly, it was a nice surprise. It was very refreshing, and it was interesting. It had an indie movie feel to it in a good way, to where like I just felt like it was a raw, kind of honest movie. Now, I don't want to speak too much about, like, because the movie is all about, the premise is, it's kind of like a Rear Window type of scenario, but the twist is that the main guy, the star of the movie, he has schizophrenia, and it's really bad, and then, you know, he lives with his sister. And then he has this next door neighbor played by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and he is a retired cop who's like I don't know, like he's just kind of a mess. You know, they're both kind of a mess. And the main guy, I guess I could call him Birdie because that's his nickname. And it's funny because I forgot his real name, even though he makes a point in the movie to say, I have a real name, and he says his name because Jeffrey Dean Morgan keeps calling him nicknames, and he makes a point to say it, but somehow I still forgot it, and so I'll just call him Birdie from now on. He sees a woman getting kidnapped, beaten up on, and taken away in a white van, which that's never a good sign. And he goes to the police about it, and they basically write him off. They dismiss him because he has been arrested in the past. He's been put away in a mental health clinic facility. And so the thing what I was saying is that I don't know how accurate this is to like real schizophrenia. Like I don't want to make it seem like, oh, like I know all about that kind of thing, and, you know, this movie's really accurate, but to me, it felt real, and it was really interesting because, you know, I've never really seen a movie about someone with schizophrenia. I've never really seen a movie where, like, someone with schizophrenia is a hero or some sort of, like, a good character. Like, usually it would be like, oh, like a crazy villainous character, you know. So that's what I really liked about the movie. One of the things that I really liked is that, you know, it's a different perspective. It's a different kind of character. And that's another thing that I really liked too about seeing Jack Quaid is that you never see him playing these types of characters. You know, every time that I've seen him, he's always the sleazy bad guy, and he's just the jackass, and you know exactly the character that he is from the beginning of the movie. And this is the first time that I've seen him where I think, wow, he did a great job, and he was really good, and he was a great leading man character. And I loved the chemistry that he had with Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Like, they worked really, really well together, to the point of where I could honestly see them in a series or in a sequel. I mean, I would say that there's another movie that's kind of similar to this that was really underrated. And I can't remember. It might have been 2016 when it came out, 2015. It's called The Nice Guys. If you like The Nice Guys, I think that you'll really like this movie. It's not the same kind of movie. It's not as much of a comedy. It's very real. It's very gritty, I guess you could say. Gritty is kind of a pretentious term. You know, like, that's like a pretentious term to call a movie. It's gritty and it's real. But it's very real. There's a lot of times in the movie where you expect something to happen and then something else completely different happens and you're thrown off. You're like, whoa, I did not expect that. There's a ton of surprises like that. Like, there are some really strange, like, WTF moments too. And so that's another thing that I liked about the movie, is that in that way, I almost kind of had like a little tiny bit of a David Lynchian type of feel. So I don't want to give away too much about the plot until the spoiler part of this review. I just want to say that I really enjoyed the movie. I thought that there were some elements of it that were a little predictable. Like, the part that I really didn't like was the police. The way that they acted, and they were just kind of there in the background. They were just there to do things that were necessary to do. You know, like, well, I can't say anything more because, you know, but it would be spoiling. But I will say, like, they didn't do a lot. But they were just kind of hovering in the background like, okay, we know that you need us now. And so we come into the story. And in particular, the ending. The ending is probably my least favorite part of the movie because I don't know, like, I didn't want some kind of like a Hollywood type of ending. But the way that the movie ends, you know, there's a lot of things that they set up with these characters. A lot of like, I guess you could say subplots. Not really, but just like little things about them, like Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character. He's kind of older. His health is kind of fading away, and he's on a really poor diet. And you know, one of the first scenes he's in, he's actually just sitting at his house eating like a whole plate of bacon while he's playing online poker with all the rest of his money. And there's little stuff like that that's never really resolved. Like, neither of those two things never came back to really do anything later on in the movie, in terms of like, there was no payoff to that. It was just like, oh, this is a part of his character. Like, you know, usually, you know, at the end, if there was something like that, then maybe his character would have a heart attack, or maybe his character would, well, I mean, his character did do one thing that I don't want to spoil, but, you know, it was kind of a sacrifice that, you know, showed, but it's still, it was kind of small. And then the whole thing with the money, both of these characters, they were kind of desperate for a job. They were kind of desperate for money in any way, shape, or form. And so I really thought that at the end there would be some sort of a payoff to that. But again, there wasn't. And I guess that was just the realness of it. That was like the raw nature of the story, is like, oh yeah, You thought that these characters were going to get some grand reward, and you thought that they were going to have this big, like, Hollywood ending with this fanfare and recognition and shit. Oh no, they're just going to have this small ending where it was very abrupt, I guess is what you could say. It was an abrupt ending, and it kind of made the movie feel like, oh, like, the movie was still really good. Like, I would highly recommend this movie. I really enjoy movies like this. And what I mean by that is, number one, I love detective movies. I love mysteries. And I don't feel like there are enough mysteries nowadays. I don't feel like there's enough movies where you just have a guy or a girl and they're solving a mystery and, they got to figure it out. Like, I really miss those types of movies. I miss those types of stories because they get your brain thinking. For all the talk that Christopher Nolan has about, like, I like to make movies, and that was a terrible impression of Christopher Nolan. I like to. Okay, I'm not going to try to do an impression anymore. I like to make movies that make people think, and then it's like you're making Oppenheimer, which is like a biopic about the guy who invented the nuclear bomb, and it's like that's not like a thinking movie the way that a detective story would be. And he made Memento, so he knows how to make like a thinking movie. But I wish that there were more movies like Memento and like Neighborhood Watch, because they're really entertaining. They're really good. Another thing that I love is a movie where it's basically like a buddy movie where you have these two characters. They bounce off of each other really well, not in a sexual way, but just in a just general, like, they have great chemistry. They're really, really good together, these two actors. I would love to see them together again in a movie or a TV show. And then number three, most of the movie takes place in just the one day and night. That's like one of my all-time favorite things to happen in a movie, is to just feel like you're there for that little time period, and there's all the stuff that happens in that little time period of like just a day or a night, or a day and a night, and then the next morning. And that's what this movie did, basically. And I loved it. I thought that it was great. The only issue, though, is the ending. The abrupt ending, and kind of the lack of, like, oh, what's going to happen next? It kind of reminds me of The Black Phone. People love The Black Phone. I love The Black Phone. Everyone loves The Black Phone. In fact, there's a Black Phone 2 coming out this year. Cha-ching, cha-ching. And, but a big problem that I had with that movie was that it had a very abrupt ending. The last shot of that movie was, like, so abrupt. It was like the guy and his sister escape, and their abusive dad welcomes them back, and then it was just done. It was very, very abrupt. And this movie was the same. It had this kind of like, just like, oh, all of a sudden, like, oh, I guess it's over. So I'm not going to say anyways again. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. And in terms of food, yesterday, actually, even though I was doing pretty bad, Safi and I went and did this music bingo. It was a community music bingo game. And it was really hilarious because I was going to use that experience as a way to talk about forms of torture on this channel, because some of the music that we started off with, like, They started off with like 2010s music and 2000s music, and it was just all horrible and awful. And it was like being tortured. It was like, the scene of Marathon Man where Dustin Hoffman gets his teeth drilled into without any anesthesia. And and then what happened though was the worst of the worst. They did a Taylor Swift round, and I was about ready to jump out the window because I was like, oh my God. It kind of reminded me of that episode in Leave It to Beaver where Beaver is forced to go to the all-girls birthday party, and then he goes in the back room and he hangs out with the dad for the whole party. That's what it reminded me of. But like, so they were playing this awful Taylor Swift music. It was awful. It was so bad. And I could say more about her, but I won't because that's not what this video is about. I'm sure I'll make a Taylor Swift video sometime. She deserves one or two, or maybe a couple more, 3 or 4 or 5. Anyways, I was looking down at my bingo card and all of a sudden I was like, wow, I have 4 out of 5. And then the very next song came on, and I was really kind of like, oh, is this the one? Is this the song? And then it was, and I won. And so it was just so ironic that out of all the rounds that I could have won, I won the Taylor Swift round. And then I picked 50s and 60s, and I actually won a second time. So I won 2 in a row, and we ended up having Papa John's pizza, and this is the point that I was getting at, is that they ordered, one of the pizzas was a Supreme. And I was really kind of hesitant about eating like a Supreme just because of how sick I was feeling. But I wanted to try it, and I wanted to see, because, when we went to Papa John's last week, all I got was just the pepperoni and cheese, very simple order. But actually, the Supreme Pizza was really, really good. It wasn't the greatest, I mean, it's not the best. It's not as good as Domino's. But it was really, really good. And it was a really nice surprise, just like winning bingo twice out of nowhere. So that's kind of like what this movie was to me. It was like a surprise. And so then the second time that I won, to make things fair for everyone, I was just able to take home a pizza, and I took home the other Supreme pizza. And so I thought that was a great reward, just like that this movie was. And so I would highly recommend this movie once again. I think it is definitely the best movie of 2025 so far. I haven't seen all the movies that I want to see too, so that's another caveat to this review. Spoiler alert. First off, there's this part in the movie. Okay, so the guy who kidnaps the girl, he actually ends up getting killed. That was super, super surprising. He was basically the most like evil villain. Like, he was the head villain of the movie. Like, he was like the head honcho. And so it was really funny how quickly he got dispatched, because you expected him to be there till the very end. And so that was a really good surprise. I loved it. And I just loved how they treated the main character, Birdie. And I loved how they didn't treat his mental illness like it was an attraction, or like it was just like a gimmick. Like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like a guy with schizophrenia solved a mystery or something? Like, it wasn't treated as superficial like that. It was treated very respectfully and very real. There were some good jokes. There were some moments that were, very over the top. But then there were some moments like that with Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character too. And one of the moments of the movie that I'm a little like, I don't know, I guess you could say like confused about. I don't want to say confused because I think I'm probably right. They end up tracking down the house of the bad guy that they killed. And they go in there, and it almost feels like, oh, what is this even the right house? And they end up finding nothing, and they're about to turn themselves in, and then all of a sudden there's this woman, this old woman who comes out of nowhere with an axe, and then she just runs away, and we never see her again. And that was what I'm talking about with like these WTF moments. But even the characters in the movie were like freaked out by it. But that's why I was kind of like let down at the end, is because we don't get any real explanation for that. We don't get any real explaining about like, you know, oh, who is she? Because they say like, is that his mother? And so you could say him and his mom, this bad guy and his mom, they were running a mom and son sex trafficking operation. That's basically the assumption that you have to have by the end of the movie. Or I guess he was just using his mom's identity. I don't know, but like he said that the bad guy said that he had two partners. And one of them was this other guy that they caught, and there was some great stuff with him too. But the other one was like a mystery. And then at the very end, you know, the woman came out with the axe. And so I guess they say that like this guy and his mom were doing this operation together, which is really, really, really freaky and creepy and weird. And I really think that they didn't get enough into that at the end. I don't think that they went full, like, weird, creepy, freaky. They just, it just felt real. It just felt like kind of raw and kind of like honest, like in a, almost like a documentary kind of way. You know, the movie very much had a feel like it could have been a true story. Maybe. I'm not saying that, like, totally, but, like, it just had the feeling that, like, instead of, like, Hollywoodizing things, that it was just very straightforward and honest. But then at the very end, so that was the thing that I didn't like, the thing with the axe woman. I guess the mom of the bad guy, so his other partner was also his mom, I guess. But the thing that I didn't like was that at the very end, both characters basically, they just sit in a police car and an ambulance. They look at each other, they smile, they play music, and then it cuts to black. And I thought, wow, you know, you didn't want to do a big Hollywood ending, but that really felt like a Hollywood thing to do. A really queer Hollywood thing to do. You just show a shot of one guy. Oh, look, it's you. Hey. And then the other guy. Oh, hey, it's you, too. Ooh. And then you play this loud music and you cut to black. Like, are you serious? Like, the thing that I didn't like was that, like, there's nothing resolved about these characters. It's basically just like life goes on. You know, like, oh, they did this. Who cares about what happens next? And I just felt like it's one thing to be realistic. It's one thing to, you know, be like, oh, no, that big cliche Hollywood thing isn't going to happen. But it's another thing to just completely throw away what you have going for the sake of quote-unquote realism. Because the thing that I thought when I was watching this movie... I'm going to take a drink. I thought about Home Alone 1. You guys remember after Harry and Marv get caught, they're sitting in the police car. Kevin's watching from his window, and he's waving goodbye to them, smiling, and they're looking back at him like they're so pissed off, they want to kill him so badly. And that was a great moment. That was a very Hollywoody type of moment, but it was great. It was perfect. And then after that, what happens, guys? Does the movie end? Because that's what it felt like. It felt like if you were watching Home Alone and then all of a sudden it just ended and we didn't get to see the rest. We didn't get to see the beautiful sequence where his family returns and he's really glad, and it's just like a really like nice kind of warm ending. And then the whole thing with the can't remember his name. Dang it. I can't. I'm doing bad with names tonight. I got Harry and Marv and Kevin. The shovel guy. Dang it. Old Man Marley. Ha, suck on that. Old Man Marley reuniting with his daughter and his granddaughter and his son. These were very powerful, beautiful moments, and they made the entire movie worth it. The movie would not have been great without that last sequence. It wouldn't have been great without seeing, because that was the true payoff. Like, the payoff wasn't just seeing Harry and Marv get caught. The payoff was seeing Kevin reunite with his family. And I feel like this movie was missing that second payoff. It was missing Jeffrey Dean Morgan and Jack Quaid getting some kind of a reward. It missed them getting like jobs so that they would be in more stable positions. It missed just it all the way around. It just felt like like it just cut off at the end. I mean, it almost felt like a movie from the 1930s. Back in the 1930s, they'd defeat the bad guy and then boom, the movie would be done. And that would be the end. So yeah, but anyway, this review's gone on pretty long, and yeah, I enjoyed the movie. So please like this video and comment. Tell me what you thought of Neighborhood Watch. I also think it's a good title, and then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see honest movie reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.